a lot of times you see these ancient structures and people claim that they were made by aliens. The Pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge in the UK, Machu Picchu in Peru. Is there any proof at all that these weren't simply man-made with, just some smart mathematicians behind them? I personally don't see anything alien-like when I go to the Pyramids of Giza. You yourself, do you see any sort of connection between those two things?
Well, honestly, I don't necessarily think that there were the ETs that made them. I think there could have been some extraordinary technologies that were used. For example, there is a record of technologies that existed on Earth, of civilization more advanced than we are now. And the question is, were there some use of some type of electrogravitic levitation technologies that were used? The other problem is, even when the Smithsonian paid $5 million to simulate using mathematics and the technology that archaeologists say existed back in the time of the pyramids, those obelisks, like the Washington Monument, but those were all one big piece of stone, they couldn't raise the smallest one with everything we know now about mathematics and engineering with what's been postulated. So there's something doesn't add up there. But I think it's a bridge too far to claim they were built by ETs. But they were certainly, their construction and the precision of the stones cut, how far they were moved, how they were put into place. There are a lot of questions I have, but I have no proof of how that might have happened, except the man I referred to earlier from Redstone Arsenal area, who is given material occasionally, is not always extraterrestrial. He has been given objects that are tens of thousands of years old or older, that are technological, that have been found in the ocean and elsewhere, that were of human origin and were extremely advanced technologies. So I believe that it's likely that on Earth, prior to the modern era, there have been civilizations far advanced beyond where we are, that for which we have very little record. And when that record is found, I think it's kind of swept under the carpet. It's interesting. There were years ago when they did the Mars images, and they found that there were these obelisks and strange-looking objects on Mars. I went out to the Goddard Space Flight Center here outside D.C. to meet with Mark Carlotta and some other scientists there, and they said, yep, it's been pixelated out for the public, but there are structures there. And they were very ancient, but we're talking millions of years old, millions. And I was out in California after I had disclosed this to some people, and a man came up to me from JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, and I didn't know him. He knew who I was and said, Dr. Greer, here's the issue. You're right, those exist, but we can't disclose that. I said, why? It's not an operational ET device. It's not, it's old. He says, yes, but you don't understand how powerful this information is. I said, why? He says, if this was disclosed, it would collapse the fundamentalist orthodox belief systems of every religion on Earth. I said, what? This science and this evidence is being kept secret for religious reasons? He says, yes. Because the creation myths, now I'm not talking about most people, but those sort of fundamentalist orthodox belief systems, they'd all crumble. They'd be completely gone. And you would have to come up with something a little more rational, right? Than the world is 6,000 years old. And we, used to ride dinosaurs, like horses. If you go to the Creation Museum in Kentucky. So this is true, by the way. Those of you in urban areas, you need to kind of wake up a bit about the rest of the world. But that's just how it is. So what I tell people is that some of this evidence has been kept secret, not for scientific reasons, but for social belief and how much that information would disrupt most people's foundations of their paradigm and belief.
Well, I mean, back in the day, thousands of years ago, this was true. I mean, when ancient, scientists said that the earth was round, they were put in jail and they were, executed.
Yep.
Saying that the earth was not the center of the universe was heresy.
Yep.
In fact, for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, people thought that the sun and the moons rotated around the earth.
Yep.
And when basic astronomy showed that wasn't true, they said, oh, well, there's little semicircles that they were doing around the earth to try to somehow justify it. And then that didn't work until finally someone said, okay, the only plausible explanation is that the sun is the center of this universe and all the planets rotate around it and all those pieces fit together. But in 2023, science is out there and so forth. So I mean, religion is not running the world rational. The way it did in 2,000-3,000 years ago, even 1,000 years ago.
But that's not
so why would people get the feathers ruffled over this?
Because there are still huge numbers of people in our country and around the world who are not rational and scientific. They're really based on their these belief systems, which would be upended. And this guy was very blunt about it, and I think he's quite correct. For example, we might find out that the origins of Homo sapiens altogether isn't what we think, either Darwinian or other. So there are all kinds of implications to this issue. This is one of the things when I was out at Lawrence Rockefeller's ranch back when we were setting up things for the Clinton administration back in September of '93. Out in the Tetons, and he took me out at night on the deck, and he said, look, he said, Dr. Greer, no aspect of life on Earth will be unaffected by this being disclosed. So vast and so large are the implications. I said, yes, Lawrence, that's why it's been kept so secret. So now we're touching on another whole area of concern, and that is, now I don't think most rational religious and spiritual people would have a problem with the fact they don't think the world's 6,000 years old, and there's no reason for them to think that a supreme being would leave all his hopes for intelligent life just in humans. God help us, right? So, but, there are a large number of people, and around the world, a significant number of people who would find that very upsetting. So that's been another consideration. It's easy for hyper-rational Westerners who live in urban areas to brush that off. But if you go around the world, and we're talking a world of 8 billion people, they're not all like you in New York.